probably the main reason that people come to me is to learn how to meet people for dating and to learn how to communicate with those people with more power and persuasion. And, learning from videos, that's a decent way to go. But the really big revelations and major jumps in most people's ability come from personal mentoring. Like all the top guys I know, and I know most of these guys personally, they've experienced some kind of like aha moment where all that book learning comes together in this sort of big blinding flash. And again, that usually comes from personal mentoring. It's like 1 minute you're over here, you're kind of leveling along with this so-so skill set, and the next moment there's this kind of breakthrough where all of a sudden you're off to the races and your inner James Bond is awake, he's alive, and he's like getting the business done for you. And that's how the pros got so damn good in the first place. They sought out teachers and they embraced every single opportunity that they could find to break through the limitations of that lame ass rookie routine weak sauce game, so to speak. And again, those opportunities are almost always in a face-to-face situation. It's like, look, this stuff ain't brain surgery, but there is a certain amount of voodoo, so to speak, that is best experienced firsthand, personally, in a very hardcore learning environment where you can actually interact with your teacher face-to-face and they can actually give you feedback. So for me, that big aha moment came within a few weeks of me traveling down and visiting the so-called Project Hollywood almost 20 years ago. And at the time, quite frankly, I kind of thought I knew everything there was to know about running a good interaction. And, I had that belief, that idea that I already knew everything I needed to know because I had read all the material, right? I had read all the available material on the subject, so therefore I knew everything I needed to know. And quite frankly, I was a bit of like a up-and-coming superstar, quote unquote, on the Usenet groups. So lame. And I did have a certain amount of success under my belt. But that belief that I knew everything that I needed to know was actually murdering my ability to bring home the bacon, so to speak, in any meaningful and major way, right? The success I had was good, but it wasn't spectacular at the time. And I remember very clearly how I felt back then because I knew that that revelation was nearby and it was about to happen. This is all very, very vivid in my memory. It's a feeling, okay? It's a belief that I see, quite frankly, that's hampering most people's ability who come to me for advice. They think they got it all, right? They don't understand that there is an X factor involved to move them up to that next level. And today I recognize the difference between the before and after of that experience. I've been on both sides of that coin and I know what it's like. I know what it's like to hold that belief that's hurting your bottom line ultimately. And so look, that's how I teach today. I know that you've got a charisma monster hiding somewhere deep down inside of you, and I have ways to wake that little fucker up so you can put him to work for you. The difference between interacting at that so-so level and finally reaching that world-class level of understanding is, that understanding of what it takes to actually make people love you. That's everything, right? That little switch, that's everything. That's what separates the happy rich people from the struggling, struggle bus, lonely wannabes. All right. And look, I know how to teach. I've been doing it for 18 years. And the results that my students get are life-changing. And they, quite frankly, speak for themselves. And all of those results are a direct result of getting that critical breakthrough where all the bullshit falls away and things just click into place. So this is only the second 8-week mentoring course that I've ever offered. This one that's coming up, this class that's about to start. And these programs, it's not a huge payday for me. All right. Because I have to keep the attendance intimately small because I do offer so much personalized attention. We're talking about twice weekly calls, and these calls last for hours. Okay, and in fact, there's just a couple more seats open. Most of the available seats were snatched up pretty quick, but as of this filming right now, there are a couple left. So I want you to get serious. Okay, I want you to get serious about your life and I want you to join this course. You're gonna find the details in the description below. Just click that link to apply, but you gotta hurry because I know that there's some people waffling kind of on the fence right now about signing up for those remaining seats. So you do have a brief window of opportunity here. So quit fucking around, all right? So now I'd like to show you a quick clip from one of these mentoring calls that I just mentioned so you can kind of get a feel of what goes on in the program. Enjoy.
No, I'd like to actually say, from doing all the exercises and especially the facial ones, I've noticed in myself in interactions, I notice when my face moves, which is quite interesting. When Whereas before, I don't think I ever did, which is good, I guess. Yeah, I can see the emotions on other people more acutely too. Like I could go, oh, that person's feeling that, or this person's feeling this now. So I have enjoyed that aspect.
Well, absolutely, because it's funny because like we've always said, there's those external projective modes of the face, the voice, the body. Those form a kind of a communicative trio, the projective communicative trio. But then there's also a perceptual trio of sight, hearing, and touch that you receive communications from other people. So there's the projective system, there's the perceptual system, and then the interaction of those two systems forms a higher overarching system, which is, again, something that's very, very compelling as a concept to me. And as you develop the projective modes, you're going to almost as a consequence, almost as like a byproduct, you're going to develop your perceptual modes as well. And you'll be better able to sense those tiny shifts in emotional energy that allow you to modulate your tone and sort of ride the wave, if you will, and not get like a blowout where, the person just goes sour on whatever you're saying and it seems to come out of nowhere. But again, once you have that higher, emotional acuity, if you will, you can kind of see it going there almost before they even realize it cognitively. And then that's what gives you like a real maneuverability, a real power to change it, because you can change it before, like you see the emotional episode taking hold. And when I say emotional episode, it doesn't mean like they're like running around the room screaming, but like literally an emotional episode could just be like a mild contempt or something like that. But you can see it taking hold because there's always physiological markers, right? There are physiological markers that are essentially involuntary. And when you see these coming up, it gives you that ability to boom, bam, statement of empathy, boom, plow it under, fixed, handled. And you almost become this sort of like ninja where you're just like, again, a lot more maneuverable in conversation. Like awareness is really the key of all of this, because I think it's very interesting to think how most people, myself included, before they're exposed to these kind of ideas, they just, like I said before, they just generally view their communication as this sort of generalized whole, right? I just talk, and they don't think, okay, well, there's the facial expressions, there's the eye contact, there's the body language, there's the movement through space. There's not just they just basically think of it in terms of the content of the logical content and meaning of the words they're speaking, right? There's not a whole hell of a lot of thought put to, again, all of these like variables that go into it. And once you become aware of them, you just have so much more control over what you're expressing precisely. And you have much more awareness of what you're actually expressing. Like at that very beginning in the first week, you do that, what do you call it? The self-evaluation worksheet. And in fact, at the end of this, I should probably have, that's a great idea, Jeff. Have you do it again. That same worksheet just to see what has changed, because it's weird because most people, like, since the face, the voice, the body are so much a part of our everyday lives, I think we often not even hesitate to examine them. Yeah, we just more of a taking for granted. You don't even think about it, right? But once you start to look at, so you just kind of think it's like maybe a couple different knobs. Like I said, like when I started going to my voice coach, I'd been singing, amateur hour, for like 15 years, 20 years. And so I thought I had a pretty good grasp on it. But in retrospect, I probably had about, 3 switches and 2 sliders or something. But now I feel like I have this whole like Dr. Dre studio soundboard with like knobs, dials, sliders, like switches. And there's just so much more nuance that you can bring to your expression when you know this stuff. It's kind of fascinating. But of course, then you also get to a situation where you have a lot more information. So you've got to develop a way to, I guess, process that information in the field, so to speak. And when I say in the field, I mean in actual performance, whether that's on stage, whether that's in actual communicative interactions. You got to find a way to process the information that in a way that allows you to move forward with the technique and doesn't overwhelm the cognitive working space. In particular, you know, what we're talking about right now is relates to those in the 6 skills of charismatic communication, basically coordination and concentration. You know, the more you develop your awareness of like social dynamics, of technique, of, you know, the more you develop your kind of situational awareness of both the environment as you interact and your, you know, the so-called energy system, you know, the face, the voice, the body, the intellect, the emotional process, intuition. The more that you have an awareness of that, the more control that you're going to need in performance or in the field, so to speak, to sort out all of the information that's being processed. Again, what's happening in the environment, what's happening internally, where are you in terms of the horizontal plot development. So like I said, this does relate. This is why we want to develop that skill of concentration. That's why we wanted, you know, how much is exclusionary, how much is inclusionary at any given moment. Coordinating, juggling all the balls in the air, you know, perhaps you might call this a game focus. You got to develop this focus where it helps you process all of the information that's unfolding dynamically in the environment as you perform, as you interact. And as you become more situationally aware of all these you know, variables, your mind is going to attempt to absorb, it's going to attempt to process all of this information. So the key, when we're talking about concentration, when we're talking about coordination, the key is sorting out what data is critical and what data is not critical, right? So that's a skill, you know, that's a skill to develop going forward. But again, you know, kind of an interesting place to go from just saying, I'm aware of my face moving more when I interact. But, you know, ultimately, you know, you can kind of see what I'm getting at with that. So yeah, that's very cool that you're developing these awarenesses. But again, now the next step is kind of learning how to use that information in practice, right? And kind of leveraging it, like what's useful, what's not, and learning to kind of use that to not only get your communication as nuanced as possible to express precisely what you're attempting. Because it's very funny, you know, I see people all the time who they're not like, they're communicating like with Chris a moment ago. You know, he's like, I went up and I said, where do you live? What do you do? It's like, okay, you're communicating, but it's not just about the verbal content. It's about what is the emotional, like every time you say something, you are, even if you don't say something, every time you like stand in front of someone and make a facial expression, every time you stand in front of them, how close you're standing, you're sending an emotional packet of information. You're sending a packet of emotional information. You need to be aware of what that information is, right? If you're just like, I'm just saying shit, like you're lost. You know, you are lost.
You are.
Right? And so you need to become experientially aware of what am I communicating? And then is what I think I'm communicating the same thing as what is being perceived by other people? Closing that gap. I think that that's a huge thing to, a huge aim of this entire course is getting, and that was one of the questions in that, you know, initial self-evaluation questionnaire, is what you think you're communicating and what you're actually communicating the same? If not, are you experientially aware of this gap? And if so, what are you doing to actually change it? You know, and so again, that's kind of the aim of a lot of these exercises. So very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we got a new fella here. Do you want to kind of give a quick intro to the group here? You know, we're pretty tight knit.
But I've been practicing game for a while and the social interaction. What I'm doing here, though, in this course, I want to basically, you know, I have a lot of the techniques down, I think, at least in my head, and some out extroverting it. But there's a part of me that I think is, if I can take care of this, I feel it's almost like everything else would fall into place. And it's weird to say, it's almost like I feel like I don't really enjoy social interaction. I mean, I do, but there's a certain level of it that I know I could just be in love with it. like if a person walks by, a lot of times I've developed this over the years where something, you know, there's this intuition that pops in where I know I can say something. And a lot of times I do, but most of the times I don't. And it's funny because my mind is like, here's something you can say it. You know, just it could be a quick comment and the person you just walk by and that's it. And I know I don't do it. And I think it comes a lot down to just me not really enjoying and being in love with being extroverted.
Being like quote unquote charismatic, it doesn't require you to be extroverted per se. And honestly, this might sound weird to you, but I do not consider myself like a huge extrovert. I know most people who like know me would be like, shut the fuck up. You're obviously one. But I think what enabled me, and this speaking from personal experience, you know, when I started this journey, because again, remember, when I started, I was not proficient in the slightest at any of this. You know, if you look at myself, you look at Tyler, Owen, you look at Max, you look at Julian, you look at any of these people, it's easy rather to forget that we were once just like, you know, any other novice. And we had to learn this shit too. So I think that once you learn this stuff, and I was just talking about this a moment ago, you know, when I was talking about those variables and you get this greater sense of control, right? That's what enables you to kind of have that confidence to go into pretty much any situation. And yes, there's still going to be that apprehension before you do it. You know, again, before you make the call, before you approach the person. But, you know, when you first arrive at the venue or whatever, you may have that apprehension. But once you do, you know, again, you get over your fucking self, you go up the hill, you charge up the hill, you're like, oh yeah, right. And then you remember that you have those new capabilities. It enables you to just feel very, very free and just very in control. And I think that's the number one way to increase confidence in general, you know, where it's no longer this fake it till you make it thing, which can be, and again, as you'll see, you know, when you get into week 4, you know, fake it till you make it can be very useful. But most people will run up against the limitations of that rather swiftly. And you've got to get to a point where it's no longer, you know, the confidence is no longer this facade that you're putting on, but it's rather just emanating from, you know, the bedrock of your being, so to speak. So again, this stuff isn't something that you're doing anymore, but it's just who you are. And for me, I think, you know, once you not only learn the skills, right, but you internalize them on that quote unquote deep visceral level. In other words, you take it from knowledge to knowing. You know, knowledge is great. You know, I know these words that are symbols of concepts and ideas that I could use in social interaction, as opposed to going out and experiencing those concepts in real time in like 4-dimensional meat space again and again and again and again. So you not only see how, you know, these things happen when you express them with your face, voice, and body, but you see how the inner emotional process begins to color or attempts to color that, how, you know, the intellect wants to assert judgmental control over the entire process, how the intuition is feeding you, you know, little things to say. Like, again, like you said earlier, you know, you see this person, you're like, oh, here's the perfect thing I can say, but the moment passes because maybe you don't trust your faculties, or maybe you're not entirely open to those kind of intuitive energies. It's not until you've, again, experienced it in real time a lot, right? Again and again and again and again, that you're going to be able to execute in reality when the opportunity arises. It's like the same thing with, you know, like say, for example, learning like martial arts. Yeah, you can do these drills. You can, I'm doing my kata or whatever. Hell, you could even spar with your buddy for that matter with like pads on. But if you get in like a real physical fight, it's probably going to be a lot different. You know, like you're going to be flooded with like adrenaline. There's these emotions. The lizard brain might want to assert control for survival, all this other stuff. And it's much, much different. And it's not until you've been in the situation, you know, like a live fire, quote unquote, situation again and again and again, that you'll be able, oh yeah, this is how it feels when that happens. And you won't just fall prey to these, you know, emotional triggers, or fall prey to these, the intellect's desire to assert these control patterns due to the negative social conditionings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's great to engage. And that's the aim of this program, is to make you intimately familiar with all of the variables that are happening when you're attempting to interact, right? But then you've also got to do it, right? So there, again, you got to go out and practice. You got to go out and have actual interactions. But knowing this stuff is going to set you definitely on the right path, right? Where it's not just this like numbers game anymore. I mean, yes, to an extent, it is always going to be a numbers game, because is the person that you approached even receptive to what you're proposing? Are they even in a place where they could accept your proposal? Is the situation, are they even in the same place you are? At the same place, right place, right time. There's a lot of that goes into it, but so yeah, it is always going to be a quote unquote numbers game, so to speak. But when you are aware of all of this stuff, both technique and what's going on inside yourself, you can definitely stack those numbers far, far more in your favor than they are for like the average Gen Pop dode who's just like derping around. And what's up? What's up? Hand on the lower back. You're beautiful. What do you do? Where do you live? You know what I mean? We've all seen it. So again, developing awareness of these different things. And again, getting what you think you're projecting to be what you're actually projecting. That's a huge aim of this program. So aside from that, do you have any other kind of specific, I don't know, what you think your sticking points right now that you might want to kind of focus or hone in on a little bit in more depth?
Even that space in between almost feels like there's something with me where I'm afraid to get intimate even with people I just don't know. Like there's the super confident guy who just goes up to people and is like, hey, and gets in their space, and the people are a little bit like, whoa, what the hell? But it doesn't matter to that person that happens. And it can even itself out in the conversation later. And I feel like for me, that's some block for me where I'm afraid to get, I guess, a little intimate in a sense, which is why I was saying about enjoying being extroverted. So I wonder for you, like, I mean, you enjoy social interaction, right, Jeffy? Like, you may not call yourself an extrovert, but you enjoy it, right?
Yeah, because for me, it feels like a dream. It feels like a lucid dream I'm having, where I'm in like control of it. Then another thing too, you're like, well, I'm not necessarily sure I want to like get in front of somebody and like invade their space. Well, here's an interesting thing, as we were just talking about with, a moment ago. When you develop these projective capacities, you simultaneously develop the perceptual capacities. And so you'll get to a point where you can go up and you can really fine tune the level of like comfort. Like I can go in, boom, and I can sense like, okay, this is like an inch and a half too close, and I can like boo like that. And then they become at ease. Like you can really modulate that. And of course, that's also a function of how much you've actually been going out. Like due to quarantine and stuff, I haven't been like doing a lot of cold approach, right? And I've just been doing a lot of work. So if I were to go out now, I'm not going to have that same fine-tuned level, of emotional acuity. But it's like muscle memory. It will come back very quickly. It'll take maybe a day for me to like get back on the horse and be like, in top form, if you will. So it's kind of interesting because it is like riding a bike, as the saying goes. Once you learn this stuff, it's a skill that you will have for your whole life. And like you said too, I really believe that this is the key to making your life like a good life. I mean, as corny as that sounds, I mean, it sounds like some marketing shit, but why would I market to you? You already bought the fucking program. You know what I'm saying? Like I truly believe that. It's like,
I agree.
Because let's face it, unless you're like some troglodyte that lives in a cave, as the song goes, I am a rock, I am an island. Like you're not a rock, you're not an island. We live in a society, as another saying goes from the internet. And you have to interact with people. What is business? All business is relationships, right? There's friendships, there's your family. Again, you have to interact with people. And the more control you have over what you're communicating and how much, how much you're communicating, the more awareness you have of precisely what other people are attempting to communicate, the more awareness you have of how to navigate conflict situations and the psychology underlying that. Again, all the stuff, it's funny because I was kind of like last night, I was looking at the program as a whole and I was like, holy fuck, you know, I sat down to kind of codify, I guess, all of the variables that go into so-called charismatic communication. And I'm like, I was like looking at it, I was like, I think I got it. You know, now of course that could change in a year. Maybe I'll like add more shit because I'm like a perfectionist. So I'll be like, okay, what else? What else can we add in? But for the time being, I'm like, all right, it's good. Think we did it. Think we did it, boys. You know, so, but once you learn all of these, not just the information, but like you hone the skills, yeah, I truly believe it's going to make just your general life experience a whole hell of a lot fucking better.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Oh my God.